Child of the Wolves, Chapter 15, page 87. Still a clumsy dog. Snow fell softly as the pack trotted down the trail. Granite, who was running just behind Snowdrift, opened his mouth wide to catch the big, fluffy flakes. They felt cool, but turned to water as soon as they touched his tongue. It was the first snow of the year. The deep cold was more than a month away. Clouds covered the night sky, but the air was still. The flakes sifted straight down, sticking on branches and spruce needles. The wolves had been running since the light faded, and it was now nearly dawn. This was an important hunt. They had caught nothing for weeks. Until the fall colors vanished, hunting had been good. The wolves had eaten well. Once 3 caribou fell in a single night, and the pack stayed near the kill for many days. After eating their fill, the wolves scraped earth and leaves over the meat. After that, they rested nearby, eating whenever they were hungry, until there was not a scrap of meat on the bones. Now their luck had changed. They found no sheep, and the caribou and moose either outran the pack or stood their ground. As the days passed, Granite learned how hard it was to bring down a healthy animal. Only the old, the sick, or injured, or calves that were separated from their mothers, fell to the wolves. 10 animals escaped for every 1 they caught. Sometimes the wolves lived for days on mice or squirrels, their stomachs always half empty. On this night, Granite began to tire. He lagged farther and farther behind Ebony and Snowdrift. Again and again, Strider nudged the dog's bottom, angry because he was holding up the hunt. Finally, the gray wolf snarled and snapped. Ebony heard the commotion. He stopped abruptly and turned back. The pack formed a circle, noses pointing in. Ebony crossed the circle and looked closely at Granite, his head turned to one side. The dog pulled his tail between his legs and put back his ears. Fearful, he waited. At last, Ebony acted. He seemed to understand the young dog's weariness and the gray wolf's part in the disturbance. Instead of snarling at Granite, he growled briefly at Strider, sending the gray wolf's tail down. Strider glared at the dog, but did nothing. Ebony swung around and began to run, this time at a slower pace. Tired as Granite was, he managed to keep up with the pack. He did not want to disappoint Ebony. The sky turned gray before Ebony left the trail and trotted up the hill to a safe resting place among the rocks. The wolves bedded down in the snow, turning around several times to hollow out beds. Curling their tails over their noses, they went to sleep hungry. It was late afternoon when Granite opened his eyes. He shook himself, sending snow flying in all directions. At first he thought he was alone, for he saw nothing but a broad expanse of snow. Yet he could smell the wolves. Then Granite noticed that he was surrounded by mounds of snow. From each mound rose cloud puffs of breath. Granite stood up and stretched. The movements woke Climber, who lifted his head and looked first to the right, then to the left. Snow was heaped on his head, and he seemed to be showing off. Climber was ready for a frolic. As soon as Granite gave the play sign, stretching out his front legs and raising his hindquarters, Climber got up. Shaking off snow, he bounded over. The dog and the wolf romped through the snow, then thrust their noses deep into it. They stretched their necks and slid first their heads, then their entire bodies through the delicious cold. Granite thought it felt wonderful. For a time, Breeze watched the pair play. To Granite's surprise, she joined them, her tail wagging. On her belly, she scooted into the fresh snow, twisting back and forth. Suddenly, she stopped, raised her head high, and sniffed the breeze. With a howl that echoed in the still air, she woke the other wolves. Wondering what had excited her, Granite breathed deeply and caught the scent of distant sheep. The pack was soon on the trail. They were still running when the sun sank below the mountains. In the twilight, they came upon many sheep spread along an exposed ridge. The animals were grazing among dry grasses, uncovered by the wind. When Granite saw curled horns on every head, his heart sank. There were no calves here. The pack had found a herd of rams, and healthy rams have no trouble escaping a wolf pack. The wolves probably would not eat this night. The pack settled down to watch the herd. The rams had their backs to the wolves. Since doll sheep depend on sight to detect predators, they had not discovered their danger. For some time, the wolves watched the herd from a distance. Then Granite learned the virtue of patience. First Ebony, then the rest of the pack, noticed that one of the rams had an injured leg. He could not run. At Ebony's signal, the pack charged. Before the sheep knew that the wolves were among them, the lame ram was separated from the herd. The big wolves soon brought it down, ignoring the other sheep who ran up a nearby slope and escaped into the rocks. Climber tried to help the hunters, but he got in Strider's way, making the gray wolf break step and fall behind the rest of the pack. Strider snapped at Climber, and the young wolf fell back beside Granite. Climber's hunting skills were not much better than those of the young dog, and that made the wolf unhappy. He wanted Ebony to be proud of him. Granite knew how Climber felt. The young dog wanted Ebony to be proud of him, too. With their hunger satisfied for the first time in several weeks, the pack slept heavily for the rest of the night and through the following morning. They were on the trail the next evening when Strider began tormenting Granite. He was loping just behind the dog. From time to time, he overran Granite and, using his shoulder, shoved the young dog heavily to one side. This threw Granite into the deep snow. Each time Strider pushed him out of the line, Granite floundered and had to work hard to get back to his place. When running in the snow, a pack travels fast because each wolf places its feet in the tracks of the wolf ahead. With the packed snow beneath their feet, wolves can move rapidly. After they go by, it looks as if only a single animal passed over the trail. It was not long before the racket caught Ebony's attention. This time Strider's tricks worked. Ebony snarled at Granite and sent him back in the line. As Granite passed Romer, the black wolf snapped at him. When the hunt resumed, Granite ran behind Climber at the end of the line. Before dawn, the pack found a band of bull caribou, their dark brown coats standing out against the snow. As the wolves neared, the bulls turned to face them, lowering their great heads and showing their silvery manes and white antlers. Ebony took the pack past the caribou, making no attempt to attack. The sky lightened, and Ebony searched for a rock promontory where the wolves could sleep. As they were scratching out comfortable beds, a movement down the slope caught Granite's eye. Below them, half hidden by a bush, a red fox feasted on frozen blueberries. Although the wind blew the wolf's scent toward the fox, it did not pause in its meal. The fox seemed not to care that a pack of hungry wolves was nearby. Hoping to show Ebony how well he could hunt, Granite charged the fox. Before the dog had taken more than a dozen strides, a heavy shoulder jolted him off his feet. Granite tumbled over and over, gathering snow on his coat. As he started to get up, he was cracked by the side of a wolf's head. Granite supposed that he was once again the victim of Strider's malice, but when the dog raised his head, he looked into the fierce yellow eyes of Breeze.